Ladies and gentlemen, Anne Crabtree.
I feel embarrassed. I'm carrying my purse on stage, but Margaret Atwood did this at the Emmy, so I feel like I'm in good company, right? I hope she's watching.
So welcome to Vancouver. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And I think it's your first visit to Vancouver, is that right?
Yeah, I'm getting old, and so I can't remember exactly.
Not that old, we're the same age.
Feeble-minded in the memory department only. But I was looking out at Vancouver today, and I think I was here for a nanosecond at the age of 14. Okay, that's a little while ago. And at 18, but I was on a cross-country road trip, sneaking into campgrounds and bathing. How about that? And I don't think I saw the beautiful city that is here. Of course, it was a long time ago. It was before the 80s. So it's changed.
And this is unfortunately a flying visit for you, but we hope that you've enjoyed the time you've spent here.
Oh, I love you guys. I've had the best time in 24 hours. I'm not kidding. And I've heard this about Vancouver, and they're going to be mad at me in Toronto because I'm going to be talking you guys up tomorrow morning
They
on the
hate
set.
that.
They do. In fact, they said, "Oh, you're not going to like it as much." Like they kind of set it up that way because I think they're a little jealous. But no, I love it. It's so pretty, and so I have to come back.
So you are busy shooting in Toronto at the moment, and you're into season 2 of The Handmaid's Tale. That's right?
We are. In fact, we have literally just started, maybe not even a week ago. So it's so fresh, and I'm so proud to say that the stories are even bigger and perhaps more frightening and powerful. All those things, you never know, right? When you do a season 1 and it's successful, it almost is more frightening to come back to something like that. But I think that, knock on wood, we got something good. And I rhyme, I'm a rapper on the side. And it feels good. It feels good to come back for a second season of something. You don't often get that in my career. So it feels like coming back home to Canada, where I spend way more time than, for sure, Los Angeles. I'm never there. But I'm 7 months in Canada twice. I think I live here.
Well, of course, the Canadian tax system is going to be after you very soon, so
I
watch out
know, Helen. I've heard that.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your background and sort of what brought you into costume design. Okay. So, I know that you grew up in Kentucky.
Yes.
A girl from the South.
I just want to do a little shout out to, where are you? Yes, my girl from Henderson, Kentucky happens to live in Vancouver. And you must know that we are from the tiniest town, that if she's here, she's got to be a relative that I've never met. Until tonight, first things happen everywhere. But how amazing is that? You have to know, it is a tiny town.
So then when you were a child, did you design? Were you interested in, did somebody sew clothes for you? What was the original attraction?
I am so glad you asked that, and you can tell my mom I said it tomorrow. We were really poor, and sometimes really poor translates to awesome, because it forces your brain to do things that you thought you couldn't do. And so one of the things my amazing mother would do to keep up appearances, because while she is inherently Okinawan, she's also from the South, from Kentucky. And the nicer you dress, the more you get into better social situations. So my mother couldn't afford, I'm such a tomboy. This is completely female drag for you guys as a performance piece tonight. But I'm not kidding. I sent a picture to my best friend, and he was like, "Who is that lady?" But I usually am in overalls and coveralls, and I'm so comfortable that way. And I used to wear my brother's clothing all the time, out of financial necessity, to be honest. And I loved it. I didn't care. And I was rough and tough, and that made sense. But my mom would see things that we couldn't afford. And I think in the end, I kind of liked the girl drag also at 5. And I would just point out things like a horrible veruca salt. Like, I want that and that and that. And change the ruffle on that, and no bows. And she did it. And she did it overnight. So that is an amazing testament to my mom for not wanting We lived in the projects. I mean, she was impressing people in the projects. But, I mean, God bless her. That's awesome. They're the toughest, right, in terms of style. And so, yeah, my mother would make me these amazing things. And often, keeping up appearances, she would send these photos of me to her mom in Okinawa and say, see, we're doing all right. So it worked. She was doing film before I was doing film, right? She was creating fantasy before I was.
And so then you ended up going to fashion design school in the UK.
Kind of. I went to school in the UK. I transferred from a tiny private school in Evansville, Indiana, which is right across the bridge from Henderson, and I wanted to go further. So I signed up for their sister school called Harlexton in England, in Lincolnshire. And it wasn't a fashion school, but I ran away to London a lot to study fashion in the streets. But I studied beautiful things, such lucky things like Shakespeare and art history that was taught by Lady Wedgwood, of all things. I mean, this is kismet. I was taught by the best for these things, and none of them had anything to do with costume design. But late in life, I'm realizing it was actually quite perfect as education goes and has really taken me far, those subjects. I did study fashion design at FIT in New York, and I didn't finish. I went to work for some designers across the street and couldn't make it to class. How about that? So that's my fashion design schooling.
So how long were you at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York?
I got a bit of a grant to go there. Hey, there's people way up there. How you doing? I see cute little heads. That makes me feel good. Yay, sold out. Maybe. I went to FIT for 2 seasons, I would say. And with pursed lips, my teachers were always saying, it doesn't matter if you're working in fashion right now because you know nothing. But they were wrong. So
apparently, because didn't you say that you worked for a knit factory across the street?
Yeah, a knitwear designer, Miriam and Leon Klein, my Jewish parents that adopted me and taught me everything about making clothes, and I left them. I learned so much about the fashion industry through them because they were actually living it. And I, at the age of 21, was, believe it or not, oddly responsible for doing all of their flats. Raise your hand if you're studying fashion. Yes, girl, you know.
Can you raise your hands higher if you're studying fashion or if you're a fashion designer?
Look at all these
or
beautiful
if you're a costume
people.
Designer, yeah. Okay, great. Cool.
Wow, I hope I teach you something you do know or don't know. I feel like a flunky up here. But, listen, school's amazing. Is school amazing for fashion design? I don't really know. But I can tell you this. At 53, it took a really long time to get to this place, and I'll be really unconfident on the plane tomorrow. But I didn't finish FIT. I was actually hired because I could do the flats for Miriam and Leon to send them to China, not that I speak any dialect.
Sorry, what's that, the flats?
The flats are when, you're designing a dress or a shirt, and you sort of do these hardcore line drawings with specifics for the patterning. And I just wanted to draw. I had no idea that that's what I was doing. And cut to, 2 days ago, 2017, I just found out that Vera Wang in Paris and Preen in London, I only know this because of Margaret Atwood emailing me, are using The Handmaid's Tale as their impetus for their collection. So I didn't graduate. I was hired as child labor. But hey, it worked out.
Okay, so then you also were involved in, you got into music videos.
Something really cool happened to me. I don't have a ton of friends, but I have friends that I met oddly. The very first music video job or the very first TV show or the very first film, I'm still friends with those folks today. And I don't know why. I mean, I thank God, because they were really instrumental to give me a chance. I reached out to Milcho Manchevsky through the Village Voice, probably, or the New York Press, if that still exists. And it said, looking for a stylist for music videos, and I had never done one. but I just liked the wording of it. And I met him, and he was such a punk. We had the same kind of hardcore thing, even though I was from Kentucky, so punk there, and he was from Macedonia. We really hit it off. And that cuckoo man, I got the job, and I was like, yes, I can have a drink on my birthday. And then he put me in the video at 4 a.m. without telling me. And it was Similac Child from, what's the name of that group, rap group? Not Dr. Dre. It was awesome. It was very titillating. It was lots of milk. And it was great. And I love him, and we still have discourse. And Joseph Fiennes in The Handmaid's Tale, we worked for him, our first job together 17 years ago, in a movie called Dust, which came after. Long story short.
So then how did you transition from, commercials and music videos into film?
A cut to Milcho Manchevsky. No, I actually, let's see. I think what came first, let's see, I'm getting confused. In New York, my first jobs were for Japanese and Chinese companies. Not that I could speak the language, but I could play the part. Isn't that sad? And yet, we talked about this last night, I actually could speak the language after all. I just didn't know I could. Japanese was my first language as a baby. My mother is a proud immigrant that only wanted me to speak English, but I started picking it up, and she was like, no. Nowadays it's cool. Back in the days in Kentucky, it wasn't so much. But I started working in film and in TV in Japanese and Chinese companies, and then Milcho hired me for Dust. But I had done a few music videos with him. And was that what you asked me? I'm so embarrassed. Yeah. Sorry. I'll get to the point.
So we're going to now jump ahead because we've got some images that you brought with us. It was very kind of you. So I mean, you've done shows like PanAm, The Sopranos. You did the pilot for Sopranos, which is where you really get to make your imprint. Westworld, Masters of Sex, Rectify, and Luck. And I want to talk to you a little bit about Masters of Sex because, of late you seem to be the dystopian costume designer queen, which is weird.
It's weird. I don't hate that.
I know. It's actually.
I don't want to be just one thing.
I think it's
that's
really
not
cool.
Awful. Yeah.
But you've also, when you did Masters of Sex, it's a period piece, obviously. So can you talk to us a little bit about when you're doing a film that's, how true are you to the time? Do you do a lot of research? How much innovation is there from a costume designer when you're doing a piece that's specific period that we're familiar with?
It's different on every job. For sure, Masters of Sex was kind of a documentary, right, about Masters, William H. Masters and Virginia Johnson, and I really wanted to get it right because you kind of fall in love with your characters that you're working with, and maybe more than one. But I really wanted to do justice to Virginia Johnson because she was such a vanguard for women at a time when they were supposed to be married with kids or married with kids. And so I approached that absolutely purely from a research point of view. And I get cuckoo because often, and thank God, I think I'm hired for this now, but I was considered an upstart when I first started because I get completely obsessed with the subject matter. And it's boring for me to just study what they're wearing, who cares, right? It's interesting to a point, and if you can get that right, then you've reached a level creatively, but then what's beyond that as a person goes, beyond the character. So I absolutely did the perfect research for, I think it was 1953. I only did the first season and possibly the second, but I did pure research, and then I started veering off into this kind of, what is it called? Conspiracy theories, which is my favorite thing on the planet. And in looking at universities and what really was going on in terms of testing subjects, gay people, for example, and people of color. And I kept coming to the table, for these concept meetings with Michelle Ashford, who's an amazing showrunner, woman, writer. And she was like, Anne, there's so not time to tell that story. We're doing the Masters and Johnson story. So yeah, I go off into crazy land, but I feel like someday those will be interesting subjects. So I'm kind of researching them and keeping them in my back pocket.
So then once you meet the actor who's going to play the role, how do you marry the history of both what the wardrobe would be and who that character is in history with the individual actor who's playing them? Because everybody's different, and I'm sure you dress everybody a little bit differently.
It's so true. So in terms of that show, you have a Michael Sheen and a Lizzie Kaplan, and so on, Beau Bridges, Caitlin Fitzgerald. So Michael Sheen is a brilliant mind. He's Welsh. He's incredible because he actually thinks like me, and he'll say something very seemingly random in our conversations. I'm so paranoid that I'm not prepared for these initial meetings, and which drives the 80s crazy. But for a gentleman, for a guy, because I make everything right, so everything takes forever fitting-wise, but rather than fitting them in one suit and talking about that suit, I actually create a whole journey for them. So you might as well just film it because it's probably as long as a TV show. But I dress someone like Michael Sheen. The first fitting takes about 3.5 hours. To talk and to actually fit the clothing is a whole separate deal. But with Michael Sheen, it was amazing because he latched on to this idea, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying it. The show's over, so maybe it's okay. He was obsessed with the idea of a bull in terms of Picasso, but also in terms of mythology. And he was quite taken with this, is this boring? I don't know. The Masters was in love with classical music, and so you never want to be one note as an actor, as a director, as a costume designer. So we both were talking about his extreme anger towards not being perfect. And he couldn't get pregnant, but nobody knew, Masters. And so that's why he went into this research. But Michael was always listening to this classical music, and it was really quite violent because of the anger. And so Arvo Part, do you guys know who that is? He's amazing if you don't. He would play this music. And so, of course, bizarrely, my sweetheart Roy had been listening to Arvo Part. So that was already in my consciousness. And I always feel like that kind of kismet creativity happens, and you need to grab onto it when it happens. So those conversations were about bulls, the bull as male in society, and the sexuality that goes with that, of course, and rarely about the costume. He just wanted it to be right. He wanted things to be precise, and he wanted it to all fall back onto the book that we all read, which there was a crazy sort of Oedipal connection with Masters and his mother. Go figure. It's like classic, right? Clinical. And his mother made all of his bow ties. So Michael said, "You've got to make all my bow ties or else." And I was like, "You got it. I mean, I'm making you a suit, man. Of course I'm going to make your bow ties." But it was really important to him as a process goes, because it was all going back to the mother. And then for Lizzie, the big joke on set was she would say to Michael, like, "You've done fill in the blank," right? Can't remember what he's done. He's done everything. And he would be like, "Oh yeah, but you've done Hot Tub Time Machine." It was so mean. They're the best of friends. But Lizzie is someone who's brilliant, and she's, a genius wrapped into this hipster body. And so visually, she is this young, beautiful, sexy hipster. But internally, she's fucking Einstein, And so our fittings, she would just sit back and watch me as I would explain everything. She's really funny. And she would just be like, "Crabtree, just give me the damn dress." And I would torture her in these devices that were girdles and such. So it's different, Lizzie, it was very important for her to represent well Virginia Johnson. And clearly she got nominated, right? I forgot that year. And it's different.
How much do you redesign?
So that's kind of what many people do. And I actually never realized that until I went into the costume design houses. This is when I first moved to LA. I didn't realize that like Marc Jacobs was banned from a costume house for cutting little pieces of fabric to redo from the 40s. I love you, Marc Jacobs. But, like everybody uses those places. And so it would be very easy. And actually, Yoli, who's this designer that I worked with in New York, came to me on PanAm. And, I'm rarely in New York. And it was a first that I wasn't asking her to go look at her collection. She wanted to come to my office, and I kept saying, why? You want to come on set? Like, what is it? She goes, no, dear God, I want to see the clothes. She wanted to turn the clothing inside out and look at it, the clothing from the 50s and 60s. So I do look at things in terms of getting it right for how it's constructed, which is so different than now. But I have this ego. For being such a shy person, oddly, I have a huge ego when it comes to my work. And it's very discordant. It doesn't actually fit with me. But I have this extreme fear of just copying something. And I think everybody who's an artist in this audience, too, I don't know if anybody else has this, but I have this, it's really a phobia of doing anything alike anybody else. And it is a thread in my costumes, but I liken it to being so different in Henderson, Kentucky, and not looking like anybody or dressing like anybody. And it kind of, it's a character flaw that kind of resonates now in my work.
So you'll use it as an inspiration, but you'll go your own way, but still make it feel like it's period appropriate, as though you were a designer time traveling backwards in time. Is that fair?
It's really kind of you, the way that you said it. I think it sounds like an obsessed person, but I do look at things. I don't often get the clothing anymore. I just look at reference photos and do a lot of research. But I really do like to have my own spin on things. And of course, out of respect for the script or whoever I'm working for, if it's essential for them to have me recreate a Masters and Johnson, right? Or I was up for something that I didn't take, which is a famous Supreme Court justice. And I, of course, was going to research that. But I always want to paint it a different way.
What's Westworld about?
Westworld is a dystopian. It's set in the future, and I think they like to kind of not put a year on it. It's set in 2 time zones. When I was working on it, we decided it should be somewhere in, not set in 1850s, but look-wise of the West. We decided to settle into the 1850s because it was the most intriguing visually, the most individual in Western wear, at least. And then to go so far into the future that you wouldn't really know what year that was. And so that's what this is. There's 2 sides of the park, right? The present, which is somewhere far into the future, where very wealthy people only, they pay about $50,000 a day to come to Westworld. And so she's dressed as someone who works at the park, all in black, so that she can escape.
And the idea for people who pay $50,000 to go to Westworld is that they get to live out their fantasy.
They can do anything they wish. The sky's the limit. They sort of fill out a dossier, right, early on of their biggest wishes. And you can have a 1-week experience in Westworld. You can have a 2-week experience in Westworld. Or if you're like Ed Harris, who plays the man in black, you can be there indefinitely. And those folks, the further and further, I have to remember because it's been a minute, but I've been in Gilead. But in Westworld, the further you go out, it's sort of like rings in a lake when you throw a rock in. The further you go out, the more dangerous and exciting it becomes. Dangerous sexually, dangerous violence-wise and gun-wise. And there are great secrets to be had the further and further you go out. And so ultimately, it is a story about human beings and how we get too attached to artificial intelligence and how it's really a cautionary tale, right, about losing our humanness. That's what Westworld is. And it's something I saw when I was 9 and fell in love with. My brother and I watched it so many times. There were so many reruns in Henderson that we thought it was a TV show. And I didn't know it wasn't until I got this job, which was really embarrassing. But there it is. That's the truth.
So then, modern event. Yeah.
Oh, that's Tessa Thompson's dress that I think never came to pass. So this is one of those drawing on the back. Look, no hands ever. I'm 53. By the time I'm 60, I hope I get to draw hands. But this is Tessa Thompson, who I can't remember her name in the show, if anybody else does. But she, this is a dress that I drew quickly on the back of a script, and I think they said it was too futuristic, which they didn't want. So
it's interesting because it's still a corset, right? It's
weird. So I guess I brought that to the Handmaid's Tale. That's so crazy. Could you be my therapist?
Next slide.
Oh, cute. So this is another idea. I always have my actors walk, and this is a still, but often I'm having them, I'm making little movies of them walking because it's so different and so this is Tandy walking in a rain. I love trench coats, and I have my whole life. And I feel like such a dummy saying, I love trench coats. But I do. And I think I love androgynous things on men and women. And I think in my mind, because a host is neither male or female, I thought, that's so modern. That's so futuristic. So I think that's where I was headed. And then it got nixed. And you're seeing all the things that are the ugly side of costume design. This is my worst nightmare. The fan in the back. Oh, but this is not my worst nightmare. This is awesome. This is, I can't say anything about, season 2 of Westworld, but everybody who's seen it knows that they end on episode 10 with these samurais. And what's so cool is that I did not design this. I will say that. I had to redesign some of it because a lot of it was quite old. So this is outside of my office in the beautiful ranch of Westworld. And, the coolest thing for me this day is that they hired real samurai, people with samurai roots for that actors, real Japanese people and real samurai folks for that scene. And I literally was on the ground crying because I couldn't believe that happened. Asian people, we never get to act, right? It's the biggest joke. But they all were in the scene together, and it was so magical for me because I have samurai roots, and that's really important to me and my mom and my mom's family. So we all did a little prayer right before the scene. So if you see that scene, my mom and my ancestors are in there too. Oh, that's my man. Look at him. He's so happy. You know what he said in this photo? He said, take another, and I'll send it to my wife because I look handsome for her. And he does. So this is the end. Oh, so here's a. Can I tell a story in between? Or is this boring or good or I don't know. My stories are never about costumes. I'm so sorry, but this man I am in love with, and I can say that because he knows. But he's so dear, and he's such a true artist, and he is someone. After all these years, he absolutely recognizes. Not just in me, but in the craft service person or the PA. He literally, no one is invisible to Anthony. He goes by Tony. I refuse to call him that. But, he's a painter. He's so great. He gave me a painting. And he's so sensitive about his work. Even to this day, at 70-something. I think that's kind of probably the lesson that we all should have is you never get overly confident about what you do, even when you're Sir Anthony Hopkins. But this day was somewhere where we were shooting in glorious, I've forgotten because I don't live there hardly anymore in California, outside of Malibu. And it's a beautiful hotel, and I decided to kind of surprise him by getting a room where it was beautiful to come for a fitting. It was our last fitting together. And the poor man, they didn't have his room ready. Can you imagine? And he was like, Anne, I'm so tired. I just want some tea. I'm so tired. And I got really nervous. After all the hours that I spent with Anthony Hopkins, I had to keep him in my room until his room was ready. So we spent 3 hours talking over tea and bread. And I just felt like, what if I fuck up? And he gets to know the truth and I don't know what I'm doing. But I already spent a whole season with him. And I'm telling you, those are the best conversations. You know, we just sat there and, I don't know, talked about cheese.
I love that you can work for 28 years in the industry and still get to the point where you've got imposter syndrome.
I think everybody does. No matter what you do, I think, and I've heard this over and over, that everyone feels like a fraud, you know? And I think it's so common that I say it openly now because I think some of us who don't realize the rest of the world is fraudulent. Now you're in good company. Oh, that's my dude, James Landry Ebert, and he's from New Orleans. And he plays Slim. Yeah, so that tassel was a FU moment. I made everything he's wearing, and that tassel is one that is worn around the hat. And everything's so specific in Westworld that they didn't want it. That Jesus cute Mexican bracelet is my one of my costumers. That's not part of the thing. But I decided that it would become a talisman for good luck. It looks rather feral, right, and animalistic. And he's kept it to this day and wears it around all of his hats. He's a real cowboy.
Next slide.
Oh, he's in Stranger Things, if you've seen that. So this is my darling Jimmy Simpson and Evan Rachel Wood, and they're amazing. This is her when she's become a different kind of Dolores in trousers as opposed to her other look, and it was a moment of independence. You start to see the scales being shifted and more power going toward the women in the show, in this and Handmaid's Tale. And Jimmy came to the Design Guild Awards with me because I'm so shy at those things. So he came to buffer me. And they're both good people.
So that's interesting, actually, a transition as the character is taking on more power, as the female character is taking on more power. You take her out of skirts and put her into pants. And
yeah.
And what's the trajectory from there?
Well, I mean, it's not that you have to be in a pair of pants and dress like a man to have more power. It was part of the story, but out west, you know, pants are way more powerful on a horse than a skirt any day. And ultimately, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but, you know, someone dies. Actually, no, I'm lying. They changed the script and she's in a skirt when that happens. But anyway, we were trying to look at spaghetti westerns and the women of that. And even though they're quite bombastic and big boobied and sexy, we were trying to find the power within that in pants, if that makes any sense. This is the day they met, and that's my office, and it's Jimmy Simpson and Ben Barnes as Logan, and William and Logan, and it's so cute. Ben had broke his foot seconds before this fitting. He has long hair, and what's amazing is we dressed them up, and there was hardly any changes, which is so rare, and they took them right out and started filming them, not for the show, but to see their chemistry, you know, on screen. They became like a couple on screen. They played soon-to-be brothers-in-law, but they're both awesome and in my life still.
For the outfit on the right, when you have when you're doing something that's period, do you have access to period fabrics, or do you have to have fabrics made up?
All of it. So on this show, the hardest part, I didn't do the pilot. Someone else did the pilot. And, you know, pilots go really quickly. You have to do everything in less than a month's time, usually 3 weeks or less. And often you make choices that you may not make for a whole season. And so in this case, well, these two are new people that came during the series, but during the pilot, you know, you see sort of Tandy's fuchsia saloon girl look. And so many fabrics that were vintage, that were period, not quite from the 1900s or the 1800s, but close. They didn't have enough. They only had enough for one or two to shoot for a month or less. So I had to reprint and reweave every... If I could tell you, I don't know if you want to just live here with me for 2 weeks while I tell you the story of having to weave the Man in Black's jacket. There's only one beautiful hippie in upstate New York with a loom that could do it, or would say she would do it in a short amount of time, because you have to force people into slave labor to get these TV schedules done. One woman weaving the fabric, another team of people painting painstakingly to get a certain slub in the fabric. Tandy's dress and Angela, who plays, I've forgotten their names. This is what happens when you go on the next show. Maeve and somebody in teal, green, Clementine. We had to actually print all of their fabrics in 2D and 3D. I mean, it became crazy. And then you've got to take it out into the light. It doesn't look the same as proper fabric in the light. It's really, there's a whole sub-story to Westworld that is so ugly. And yet, I learned so much about not being afraid to recreate all of it. Yeah.
It's amazing how printing has changed everything, right?
Yeah.
Whereas back in the day,
there's people that
I mean,
just
the time
do
it would have
that.
taken you back in the day to make
To
those
make it.
costumes, incredible.
I mean, I'm old school.
Next
I don't think it's as beautiful as the real, but you know, I'm still old school. I'm on that like weird edge in my life of wanting the real thing, and you know, I would be horrible if I lived in an AI world. I think because I would just be there, no, I don't believe you. But I like real so far.
And is there another slide?
So that's Ben in my office, in the desert, and he's probably texting someone saying, I can't get out of this fitting, she's taking forever. I got in trouble for posting
Next
this
one.
photo from HBO. Okay. Oh, there's my girls.
Yeah. So now let's move forward to The Handmaid's Tale. It's interesting because in many ways, you know, they talk about art imitating life, but The Handmaid's Tale has really taken this to a new level. So let's talk a little bit about the phenomenon of The Handmaid's Tale, because it's one of those things as a designer, you've created outfits that have now been used out in the public as, protest outfits. Yeah. That's happened in Texas, and that's happened in Poland and other places as well.
So many places. That's really a story that's so beyond me, and it's a beautiful story. It's never happened in my whole career, and I don't take it lightly at all because, you know, my God, where do we start on that topic? This story is so indelible that it was almost a story I couldn't come back to after experiencing it for a full season, and I'm not alone in that. The writers have said the same thing, you know, and they were writing it, and it was so painful to go through, not just as a woman, because Bruce Miller, the show's creator, feels the same way. It is a horrific nightmare and a beautiful dream. It's both. To be able to experience that kind of symbiotic political tragedy, in my opinion, humble opinion. Yeah, it's a deep subject, but you know, to see, basically, I was safe, right, in Toronto in Canada. We all felt that. The few Americans that are on the show, mostly myself and
so
the actors.
you'd actually gone into production a few months before the election.
September, or 2 months before the election, we started shooting. And all of this was written 30 years ago, so it's not something that we said, you know, we weren't the people that were foreseeing the future. Ms. Atwood was. And everything that she wrote, as she has said in the press, had already happened in many countries and many cultures. So we knew it was going to be at least valid as a show went. We didn't know it would be popular or that people would actually enjoy it or find something akin to themselves in it. But November 8th, we all, you know, woke up and came to work, and there was there was a giant pall over everybody. And I remember because we went into a fitting, myself and Yvonne Strahovski, that plays Serena Joy, who's Polish, by the way. And we didn't say a word. You know, everyone, it's sort of when someone dies is really, and I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's political sensibility here, but it was like a death had happened in the States, and nobody knew really what to say to us as Canadians go. You know, they just kind of made some jokes or whatever. And I remember going into the fitting room with Serena and trying to act like, you know, a normal day, as a mother does, right? They're my kids. So I just wanted to act like nobody died. Putting on your dress, we're putting the pins in it. And then we both fell out crying, you know. And I think at that moment we realized that this show was going to have a huge impact for us as creative people go. And we could either wallow in deepest depression and sorrow, or we could kick some ass. And that's what I decided to do as an artist, because it's too overwhelming, right? You could just stay in your bed with the covers over, but you can't change anything on your own. You can have a voice, and you can have a silent voice sometimes creatively, and that's what I decided to do. It was actually, again, taking something ugly and making it beautiful by being so angry at what was going on politically, and in a sense experiencing Gilead in a real way in America. I decided to throw that back into the costumes and give women certain secrets and power to get back at the patriarchy.
So let's talk about the ants.
Yeah.
Costume.
Why, Helen?
Well,
anybody know why?
Let's talk about first off, let's talk about the color, the significance of the colors, and why you chose each color for this. So starting first with the ants, what was the design concept for the ants costume?
So the ants, of course I do all the research about what I think it should be, and what I thought it should be was pure military, because I don't know who's read The Handmaid's Tale or seen the show, but there's a whole construct of what I call tribal uniforms, because it's just easy to break it down that way. And the men are on one side in kind of strong black and navy military colors, and then the ants sort of fall in between, because they have no power, but they're in charge and in control of the only thing which has any source of power, which is the womb, right? There's very little fertility left in the world. It's you know, Gilead is sort of 3 years in the future, but it's way darker, and there's more Zika virus, and there's way more infertility, and there's way more AIDS, and so, like most dystopias. And so the ants are in control. In a sense, they don't care about the handmaids, they care about this real estate that nobody else has, you know, the power to have children. And so their clothing, their color came exactly from World War I military, a photograph of British khaki. And I combined that with kind of friar brown, right, religious stuff. I never wanted them to look like nuns. And then what I do, which is a bit weird because I am short and very round, but I try everything on myself, often because the actors are far away, and Dowd was in The Leftovers in Australia. I know her because I worked with her 3 times, but I tried it on me, and I have to walk in it and film that, and it wasn't flowing enough. It just felt like a cardboard box on my body. And so I remembered Maude from the 70s. I'm a kid who grew up with 60s and 70s TV and film. And, you know, Maude was like a pretty amazing, forward-thinking liberal. And even though the ants are not that, I wanted that kind of power that's in B. Arthur, that's her name, her shoulders.
Well, and B. Arthur is also someone you do not mess with.
That's right.
You do not mess with the ants.
That's right. So it came from B. Arthur, and it came from World War I, and it kind of came from Hitler. And what's interesting, it came from all those things. But it also came from the earth, which is inherently female. If you know, our indigenous brothers and sisters, they talk about the mother, and the mother is browns and the earth. And so it all of that comes from everywhere. But where was I?
There's a little design around the collar.
Oh, yes, so in my wanting to get back at the patriarchy, because it's actually kind of twisted. If you could be me for a second, or any designer, and you're asked to, as a woman, design kind of contraptions that imprison the body and imprison women, it's a really an emotional experience. And again, I'm not a softie. I'm quite much a ninja, but it really did a head number on me that I had to do this to women consistently, and it was very tiresome emotionally, and I felt responsible. And yet I knew that whatever I would do psychologically, it would help the actors who were playing those imprisoned women, i.e. the aunts in this instance. And so I hearkened back, and I don't even know why or how, but you just tuck stuff in your mind from childhood. And I remember, not childhood, but my first year of college, we were studying Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party. And I actually didn't like it, as things go.
Explain what the dinner party is for people who haven't.
So it's a feminist work of art. Maybe you want to go further? And this is what I know. But I was young, and I didn't like this conceptual art, which was basically this table where the plates were all different settings, and I'm not sure, but many involved genitalia, female genitalia. Were they all that way?
Every plate was essentially female.
Okay.
Each artist's interpretation of female genitalia.
Right. And so Judy Chicago, which I just realized she's still alive, so I pray to God she's listening all the time, because she really influenced me to look at feminist art. And why do we do that? Why in the first place do you go towards that as an artist? And it influenced me in my artwork, but I decided to do it as a quiet FU to help women. And the aunts who are not fertile, who are charged with abusing their women, their handmaids, and yet not a part of the patriarchy respect-wise, they should have something, right? So what I decided to give them was a giant vagina around their neck, vis-a-vis this little dickie that they wear. And it's so funny because we just started shooting.
And there's also something, you take the collar and you flip the collar over, and so...
I did. Yeah. I mean, I did it because I wanted that vulva vagina thing. And so I was obsessed, I guess. But I didn't want to tell anybody because it sounds cuckoo. And so I kept turning the collar, and my tailor was like, "It's so ugly. Why do you want to do this? It's so ugly, and it doesn't lay right." And I said, I got to tell you later. Just do it, please.
We actually have a little demo, which I should have played before this.
Really?
That we're going to just show.
Oh boy.
It's like a 4-minute piece. You're familiar with it. You've seen
okay.
it. So.
I'm scared a little.
So, let's see you. Turn around.
The idea was to always think on making this world not a period, rusty, dusty costume drama, but to make it so poignantly, perfectly modern and current that you would be worried looking at these people in the costumes that it could be your mother, your sister, your aunt, your best friend, women with no rights. The tone was, for me, deconstruction. Deconstructing of a thought, deconstruction of a design element, creating the handmaid's dress, and then taking everything away so that there really wasn't a pure structure. Everything has a reason, design element-wise, through the costumes. Nothing is because of beauty or vanity. I will always throw one thing off kilter so that it's uncomfortable for the actor physically, or it's very uncomfortable for the viewer visibly. And it's a psychological pull that you can affect in the clothing if you have time to think about that.
I had hair then.
Sorry, I wish we had a photograph of the...
I know, right? So that was taken, my God. And I think this time last year it was freezing, and I had no sleep, so I looked crazy. But I think more truth comes out when you're crazy and without sleep.
Your hair was super cool. And
thanks. Anyways, yeah.
So then we've talked about the ants, and now what about the Marthas?
The Marthas, so you saw the woman, beautiful Amanda Brugel, who's from Canada, and she was in the scarf, which is greenish yellow, and she's a domestic, right? These are women who are not fertile either, and they're in charge. There's one per household, sometimes two if you're wealthy, like Naomi Putnam, and they are in charge of keeping the house for the commanders' wives and the commanders. So in this house, they're quite wealthy and high up there with regard. And so they really make a show of baking all their bread, right, from scratch, and growing herbs in the garden, what little they can, and using them. And so Amanda Brugel, just quick sidebar, her whole college thesis was on The Handmaid's Tale, but she's so brilliant that she rewrote every character. And how about that? She becomes Rita on the show. I mean, there's such kismet in this show, and she's lovely. But that costume was designed, I don't know, 12 times. And that was the most modern version. I think I was trying a little bit too much to do a 1900s upstairs, downstairs kind of thing. And it took us, it was very sort of girl with the pearl earring lighting, and it became too period. So we decided to make the apron super modern that you could get, online today.
And then the
The color came from a moth,
from a moth,
which I
nice.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Econo Wives.
The Econo Wives, little secret, will become very important season 2. And I'm so glad, because you don't see them so much in season 1, except for episode 10. There's one speaking role. They're kind of in the background. The Econo Wives and the Econo Men are what I call the every man, every woman workers for freedom, I call them. And they are the people who have jobs. Well, the women never have jobs, but the men work in fishes and loaves, are butchers, they paint houses, and they are the people that are not as high up as the commanders. And that's the only thing that I changed about Atwood's book, because it was stripes in the book. And we decided early on that if we're interchanging, cutting, editing between present day and the past, you want to see pattern in the past only, not stripes, right? You'll be confused as an audience. And so I decided on a kind of gray, cement gray, that would blend in with Gilead as if they weren't there,
And then the Handmaids. We have, I think we have a sample.
Oh, yeah?
Can we get the sample? This is a
There she
live
is.
sample.
I love it.
So tell us about this costume.
So this is beautifully worn by Ruthie, our handmaid. And it's, I went with, this is the color of blood for both the cloak and the dress. And I actually am so obsessed that we were, architects of a new world. And so I didn't want the AD screaming on set, give us the bonnets, give us the bonnets. So I actually, for all the writers, I spent all night using my old Latin history and my Latin language to create an etymology for every piece of clothing. And so that we would know what they were calling for on set. Because who knows what to call anything if it's just been born, right? So the red, we looked at many different colors, and we decided that the color of blood and the color of these maple leaves in a photograph were perfect. Anytime those designers out there, artists, this is something that always stumps me. If I can't find the right color, I usually can find it in nature. And when something is a color in nature, it generally speaking, can fit anybody's face or skin tone. And so that's why we went with this color. And the wings were made 1,000,000 times. Ultimately, we were trying not to do the wings on top because it's blasphemy when you're filming. If there's any cinematographers or film folks out here, directors, we never use hats or glasses, especially in a TV show, because you're covering up the real estate of the person that you're hiring. And yet, I looked at the scarves that were in the film from 1990. I wear those kinds of scarves, and I thought, well, maybe that seems modern. But then I was going to meet Lizzie in New York, and I made sort of 5 versions of that pair of wings and the caplet underneath. And I just had her put it on. I mean, the thing about the iPhone or phones today is that you can make these mini movies and actually show the cinematographer and the director how things look while moving. And Lizzie just kind of panned her face to me in a pair of wings. And from that moment, Bruce Miller and I and Lizzie and everybody, Reed Morano and Colin, our DP, we said, my God, we're going to do it. And it's going to break new ground. We're going to have a new way of filming. And we are going to have a new way of doing sound.
The interesting thing here is that it feels like it's sort of it's both a pioneer thing, and it's like she has blinders on.
It's true.
So she must only look ahead, and there's something where just because of the angle of the hat, it's hard to see her face. So it's both about sort of privacy as well as control.
100%. And the actors actually ended up loving this, which is so strange. You know, again, I try everything on myself. It's very difficult to hear with these wings on. It's we can talk about her. Also, the way that it's constructed is it becomes a kind of light box, which I knew that it had to look good because we have so many exteriors and interiors, but we only wear the wings outside. And it wasn't until during press for The Handmaid's Tale that the DP looked at me and said, you know, Anne, in his beautiful Liverpudlian accent, that you created a light box on the head. So the lighting wasn't a problem. And because the actors don't wear hardly any makeup and certainly no hair, it was beautiful lighting. So we should all wear these, right, in our everyday life. That's my lesson.
So talk to us about the fabric and the design in this outfit.
So the design is such... Oh, I keep hitting my teeth. The design... Yeah, I just want to show you because I think it's so pretty without the cape. You know, what they wear on the inside are these, right? And they never show their hair. And often, we love this look, which is very Meryl Streep in what's the name of that movie? Hey? Yes, that's it. And so I kept trying to have them do scenes like this for me, so maybe there'll be more of this season too. But here's the dress. Now you're going to see that I actually can't walk in my shoes, and my dress is unzipping on stage as a performance piece. So one of the things that was really essential for... Oh, you're so hot. I'm so sorry. She's wearing a winter cloak, which means I had to redesign all of the costumes in The Handmaid's Tale because you have such varied weather in Canada that we started, I don't know Celsius, but we started in over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in September shooting. And we ended in February on a frozen lake in minus 30. And so this was the, I'm so sorry, Ruthie, she's dying, she's melting. This is the frozen lake, which is lined in the kind of sports fabric that you guys use for like snowboarding. Yeah. Her heat's in here if anybody's cold. So this, we had to kind of redesign stuff without changing the look because the idea is economy of design. They wouldn't care about the handmaids enough to give them a second change of clothes. This is clothes for prison. You get a dress, maybe 2. You get a cloak. You get an obi, which is my Japanese. Hey, I forgot. I love a good obi. But this is for my mom, kind of.
Is that one separate piece?
It is. It's a piece that comes off, and if you're tinier on top, there's something that's a corset which is a modern corset, which Zara is doing now. But it's all a way, if I'm a commander and I'm designing this, it's so that far away when the handmaids are walking, I can see who's pregnant and who's not by controlling the waist, right? So when a handmaid gets so pregnant that they can't wear their OB, then this gets accentuated. And this was purposefully made when I was watching Lizzie Moss. Isn't that pretty? I still love it. She wanted something really lightweight because we were beginning in July to prep. And she's quite physical, as you can see in her acting. And she wanted it to move when she moved. And I wanted this flowing river of blood when they were all walking.
This is interesting. I see.
This is a bit of a cheat, this one. I'm going to kill my assistant. She didn't know we were going to remove the cloak. But generally speaking, this is slit. These are the ones that the background people wear because there's so many. The first day of shooting, we had only Lizzie, who plays June, and OT, who plays her husband Luke, and the little girl who plays Hannah, Jordana. But the second day, we had all of Gilead do, which was insane. So there was 100 of these girls, plus the speaking roles. There was 40 guardians. There was 15 or 20 ants. There, everybody. The whole world of Gilead, who are the people in your neighborhood, had to be on set. So we had some cheaters like this. And what I decided to do as a kind of slightly punk and slightly evil thing was, and now it's driving everybody crazy. I decided that zippers and buttons were too seductive, right, in a pious society. So can you turn around? Oh no, she's going to make a liar out of me. Usually this is a background one. So usually there's a piece of fabric, if you ever look at Serena Joy, for sure, and anybody with speaking roles, there's a piece of fabric which hides the zipper pull so that you won't be tempted to undress a handmaid. And you won't, this is a but, because Ruthie is so beautifully lean, this wouldn't be here. But there's no, you can't see any closures to anything. It's like it's in, you can't penetrate it, right? Okay? Like caged. Also. But, there's a piece of fabric in the front and back that I saw on a priest in Milan walking. And the way he was walking, his fabric would flow in front of him. And it's a quick sketch that I did, honestly, just because I was mesmerized of the power of this religious person. I'm not Catholic. And it translated, 8 years later in the show.
And has she got the boots on as well?
She does. So these boots came from my own, and I've been dying to wear them, and I even tried in Westworld, and they said no, so boom, here it is in Handmaids. But they came from, I love dressing like a 1900s gentleman. And so these boots, these are boot covers, and so the handmaid, you can put your foot there. The handmaid's boots, I took away their laces. Because, as anybody knows, in prison, they take away your laces so you can't hang yourself, which was a story point in episode 1. So it's quite emotional, actually. Like, a handmaid just came up to me in tears 2 days ago, and because she realized that that's what that was, and it made her so into character. So I always want the background people to also be in character. So we sew the grommets, me being a commander designing this world, we take their laces away, right? So they can't hang themselves. We sew the grommets down so are you okay? It's, a kind of way of erasing what you knew. So when you're looking at someone like this, you know that you're living in the present, but the present has been erased overnight. And all of the clothing was taken away by a garbage truck. Your jean jacket, your glasses, your leather jacket, your tennis shoes, all gone. And they hand you your 5 easy pieces that you're going to wear for the rest of your life. And the sewing down of the grommets is just another insult to injury. And then, as if that weren't enough, I put boot covers to hide what used to be, so that you aren't even given the freedom to think about the freedom of killing oneself to leave Gilead. It's pretty emotional, right? So there's winter versions of that go all the way up, that are really sexy, and everybody tries to steal them. And then I want to show you these hooks, because I'm obsessed with them. But I decided that at first I was going to make everything out of wool, and thank God I didn't, because you would really be fainting. But this is wool. And I decided that if there's no buttons and zippers in Gilead, there should be these really evil industrial hooks, you know? And so that is a kind of weird violence toward women in and of itself. I'm doing it to the commander this season, though. He doesn't know why yet, but he will. So. Nice. We got to get back at them somehow, right?
Thank you so much for sporting this very heavy, warm outfit. Sure.
You want it back or no? You know what's funny? Lizzie said that she actually missed her costume, and that to have to think about which jeans was a nightmare. She would rather just put the same thing on every day. So that was kind of a yes moment, you know?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruthie.
Somehow we have actually, we're almost out of time. I think we have.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I want you guys to live here with me.
But I mean, we had quite a few more questions, but I think we should go to the audience for some questions too, as they've been so patient. So, a question at the
anything
front.
you want to know.
Question here, and then we'll go to you and over there. Just scream out your question. The question is, do you have a favorite fabric or material that you like to work with?
You know, I love everything, but I think because I'm such a rowdy girl, I love denim. I love like hardcore, unwashed denim because it reminds me of worker wear, and I think that is always the best designed clothing. Made forever.
Made to last, yeah.
Made to last.
Can you pass the microphone to?
Hi there.
I can see your faces now.
I was going back to The Handmaid's Tale, and I was wondering if you did anything specifically to some of the main actresses in terms of their costume.
I did. You know, it's funny. I can't talk about it for season 2, but I will say that Alexis Bledel, who plays Offglen, she just won an Emmy, and that girl is in a whole episode not talking, and she was brilliant. She is someone who really relies. Actually, she said to me after the Emmys that I helped her win that, which is huge. But I do little secret things. I'm trying to think what.
What
is it? What do I do?
You hide things in their costumes.
I do hide things in their costumes. I haven't done it yet, but I want to do this thing for Yvonne as Commander's wife. I want to do something sensual inside of her pockets, like cashmere or silk, because they're never touched, right? They never have sex. They never have anything sensual happen. So I do little things, the hooks. That'll be your secret for season 2 for the Commander. I constrict the body in some ways to inhibit walks.
Anything on 3s?
Oh God, has anybody heard the 333 story? So how do I make that one fast? It's so big. My whole life, I have, I use, as a painter, I would always paint the best from midnight to 4 a.m. And then I kind of lost it when I started working. But 333, when I first came to Toronto, I kept waking up at 3:33. And the only other time I had done that was on an artist, what's it called? Artist... Retreat, thank you. No, something else. But anyway, in lieu of time. I was writing and painting, and I was obsessed about the subject matter, and I was sent... I was sent away to a farm in Pennsylvania, and the place was haunted. I was living in a church that was beautiful. It was kind of like Gilead. It was like an old church that was painted all white, like Georgia O'Keeffe's perfect idea of a church. And I was living there alone for the first 3 weeks, and it was so haunted that these ghosts were rearranging their furniture every night. And I was trying not to notice because I was petrified downstairs. And I was laying on the floor because I didn't want to be in a bed where they could find me. So I was laying on a floor every night with a quilt. And I remember I would just pop my eyes open at 3:33. And I thought, what the hell? Like, this means something. And I was having a real block with painting. And, of course, it went away right after that. But I remember calling upon someone in Kentucky who's religious, and they were like, well, honey, that's the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. That's what that is. And I was like, what the hell? And so I kept looking up more, and I don't know if I believe it's the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, but I threw it into The Handmaid's Tale because why not? And I threw it into The Handmaid's Tale. Does anybody know Manitoulin Island? Okay, so I went there. I'm indigenous from Okinawa and also part First Nations, but I always seek out those places before I start a job, and I seeked out. Sad. From Kentucky, okay, don't be mad. Sought out, so tired, so sorry, bad excuse. I drove to Manitoulin Island like a banshee, and oddly took a photo of the map, took all these photos, found this very spiritual place, came back to Toronto, and I looked at the photo of how these lakes are situated around, one of them especially around Manitoulin, and I looked at a photo of Madeline Brewer, who plays Janine, and it was the same shape. It was 3 lakes, you know, on her chest, and I had designed the Trinity, which is 333, for those of you who are Southern religious, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I had done that on purpose, the Trinity thing, but going to Manitoulin Island just kind of fueled the idea that whatever it is you dream, and as bizarre as it is, waking up at 333, that really meant something to me, that I was being fueled in Canada. I'm not waking up at that time anymore. I'm waking up at 4:44 all the time, except when I set my alarm clock at 2. But I do use it because why the hell not? It's my own little secret. When I'm 100 years old, I'm like, that's why I did that Father, Son, Holy Ghost thing.
So it's better than the costumes. Okay, one question here. Sorry, you had a question?
I just wanted to know, what is your underwear in The Handmaid's Tale?
Oh, you're going to see it, girl.
What kind of underwear is in Handmaid's Tale?
There is. And you saw it very quickly when Lizzie was taking a bath. And I don't remember what episode. Slowly. Not as much as I would like to have seen, but I've kind of designed this whole onion skin type of peeling off of layers, which feels very akin to the 1900s. There's one pair of bloomers that are from that time that I've redesigned, but that's not all. There's many layers. And you will see that more in season 2. If you watch.
There are 2 things that I want to touch on very briefly. One is, sorry, Fran's going to kill me, but...
Oh, sorry, Fran.
One is just because it's so, I love this, that the scraps from Handmaid's Tale, we can't tell the whole thing, but just it's like
okay.
2
Oh,
lines.
man. That's the most important
I
thing.
know.
Okay, quickly. Scraps from The Handmaid's Tale. My tailor was saving all the scraps, which I was like, wow, they're only this big. You know, like, what's that going to go for? And, of course, there's, like, beautiful batches of bright red and teal blue from the wives. And finally, after a few months, I said to the tailor, where's that going? Like, who's using that? Because it's kind of a legal thing. And she said, Diana Carmichael. I fucking got it wrong in the newspaper today. But... there's a woman named Diana Carmichael. She's taking these scraps and she's utilizing it for good. She's doing projects to help abused women. Yeah. So I said I got to meet her. You know, I got to see how is she inspired in a different way than what these fabrics were used for. And basically, she's amazing. She's a feminist who had the first job in the transit system for a woman in Toronto. But beyond that, she's taking her time to create a safe space for abused women to not think about their abuse, but to think about other people. And so these scraps are going... I'm trying not to have the scraps happen in Toronto where people will be like, hey, isn't that Serena Joy's dress? So she's actually taking those scraps and making... toys for kids in third world countries. But she's also helping the homeless teens in Toronto and making mattresses out of plastic bags, you know, for them. But also using those scraps, you know, to make little holders for tampons for women in countries where they're ashamed, you know, to carry those. And so it really is a story about abused women that's fiction, that's ultimately going to real women who are abused, that are being helped by this woman. And I'm doing a documentary because I'm so inspired by her. And it's, you know, a beautiful thing that happened as a side story of The Handmaid's Tale, which mirrors it. Yes, ma'am.
And then last but not least, the one thing that we'll come back to as well, but the last thing is that you have found inspiration in the city of Vancouver, and you brought that inspiration into the audience with you as your special guest.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. Shouldn't we introduce her?
Oh my God, I'm
is she
sorry. My darling, up there, I can see your beautiful headpiece. Can you stand up? I don't want to say your name wrong. Can you say your name out loud? Safina. Safina Jones is a beautiful, I'm not going to even call you an elder because you're so young, but she is this beautiful woman that I happened to walk past yesterday in Vancouver, not even near the hotel. She's a beautiful
Do you want to come down to the stage? So we can see her?
actress who's in many films now.
She started acting a few years ago and has been in a number of films now and has got
and one
more
that was
parts
playing
coming up.
here. But she's my guest of honor. I saw her
She's gonna be in Murdoch
yesterday,
Mysteries.
and I just thought, who is that amazing woman? And then by kismet, we met last night, and I said, that's it. I think you need to come and be my good luck charm. Look at her. Tell me who's not more inspiring than Safina. Come over here. Thank you. So it's true, right? You're one of the 20 people that speaks the Haida language, amongst others. Yeah. So look at this is inspiration. I mean, I've not met anybody this beautifully visual in a really long time. So that's my guest.
Yeah. Well, Anne Crabtree, it has been such a pleasure getting to know you and hosting you here today. Thank you so much for joining us in Vancouver.
Thank you, Helen.
And thank you for joining us here today, too.
Thanks for coming out, you guys. Thank you.